When you learn to dance with life, to harmonize with life, you would never resist change. You're just joyfully along for the ride.
Hi, I'm Bridget Cudshaw with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is Matthew Brownstein, and he's the CEO of Anahat Education Group. Hopefully, I said that right. And the
Right.
executive director of the Institute of Interpersonal Hypnotherapy. He's also the author of many books. And I do know that he loves to hike and kayak and yoga and meditate. And he is so lucky he lives in the Adirondack Mountains in New York. Can you say hi, Matthew?
Yeah. Hi, Matthew. Hi, Bridget. Thanks for having me on.
I really appreciate you taking the time. I think what you're doing is really important, especially since this podcast is about resilience and sharing information. And you have a really strong background in that. And I did mention in the beginning, you're author of multiple books, and I'm sure it's related to your organization and your business. And one, my understanding, is called Peace Under All Circumstances. So
Mhm.
what prompted you, I guess, to start sharing all this information in books?
Yeah, my whole journey started when I was 19 years old with a profound spiritual awakening where peace had become the norm. It only happened for one night, but I was
Wow.
lying in, I was lying in bed, and everything all of a sudden became light and love and bliss. And I didn't really know what that was, but I knew what I was experiencing wasn't just an emotion. It seemed like this is the nature of reality. This is what is when my mind is quiet and clear. So being dedicated to peace and love and joy and bliss and deep spirituality didn't happen because I was brought up with it, but because of that one experience. I became obsessed with what had happened to me and nobody knew. But I was in college at the time, so I started studying philosophy and then religion because I needed to know the answer. And the world's religions, especially the mystical branches of religion, all explained what had happened to me. And they all talk about what the great saints and sages experience, which is deep inner peace. So I started searching for spiritual teachers outside of the university, learned about yoga, meditation, tai chi, qigong, everything getting my hands on, really. And yeah, peace, just teachers who taught me you can be at peace no matter what's happening. Being 19 years old, it was like, well, of course, why wouldn't I want my life to be based on inner peace? So eventually I wrote that book. It's one of my simpler books that aren't as deep, just so that people could get introduced to deeper spiritual teachings. And I figured inner peace is a good way to introduce that.
It is, and what you're describing, it helped me dealing with some of the health issues that I've had to find that spirituality, right? And that you mentioned the yoga, and it just helps you calm down, right? And be at peace, really, with what you have. Helps with healing, I think.
Yeah, sure. Well, the body itself is going to be in one or two systems. You're either in your sympathetic fight or flight mode, or you're in the parasympathetic rest, digest, and heal. And most of us, I think whether we realize it or not, are quite often stuck in sympathetic fight or flight mode. When we get into that mode, our autonomic nervous system starts pulling energy away from two vital systems so that we can get ready to fight or flight. The two systems that get robbed of energy when we're stressed out is your immune system and your
Right.
digestive system. So if you are immune compromised just because you're stressed, then your lack of peace actually leads to health problems, right? If you can't assimilate and digest your food well, then you're not going to be as healthy as possible. I'm a Course in Miracles teacher and student, and in the course it says, peace is health. Peace is health. And once we catch on to that, then again, like for me in my early days, 19, 20 years old, getting into this, it was just peace made a whole lot of sense as opposed to the opposite. But one of my other books is called The Sutras on Healing and Enlightenment, because I realized that the enlightenment process, which wakes you up to, simply stated, inner peace, it's much more than that, but peace is one of the benefits of being awakened to who you really are. the healing process. My background is also in Chinese medicine. So I realized the healing process and the enlightenment process are essentially synonymous. That when we wake up to who we are, we discover the inner peace that we are, the body responds in the most remarkable ways with better health.
That is so helpful. I like how you said peace is health. And I think when I had those, I'm just making me think about what happened to me, the health issues, I had lots of stress going on in my unknowingly, right?
Yeah.
And that's because you're trying to keep up with everybody else and travel, raising kids. And I think people are learning from COVID to that more about peace, how important it is. I'm sure you've seen more of that.
Oh, yeah. I'm in a lot of podcasts, and this comes up a lot where people are talking about how the past couple of years, having to sit at home, having nothing to do, people are getting on the internet and they're searching. And when I got into this, again, 19 years old, that was back in 1992, we didn't have the internet, right?
Right.
To learn about spirituality, I had to go to a temple, an ashram, a monastery, go to the Himalayas, which I did. But really, just like in college, you go to a library and you read through a book, and it might take days to get through a book. Now you can watch a 10-minute YouTube video on how to meditate, right? And the ability to gather the information, especially when you're locked at home in quarantine, it's really accessible now. And so a lot of people are suffering and they search for solutions to be free of suffering. My experience was the opposite. It was a movement into light and love and peace that made
Right.
me just want more of it. But I respect the people who, you're so stressed, you're getting sick. You said there's got to be
Right.
something more, not just there's got to be something more to life, which is a big part of it, but there's got to be something more I can do to feel better. And yeah, all you have to do is Google that now.
That's good and bad. Like they call it Google Doc, right? And is that the right one? Or Dr. Google? You don't know what's out there if it's real or not. And that's why you have to be careful. But you do at the same time, like you did, research on your own. You're like you went and traveled to help you get through that, to find it. And I believe that you should also, if you do have a health issue, to not just have one opinion. You should I'm just one of those, look at different options because everybody's different. Your bodies are different, how you're going to react to something. And I like what you're saying is optimism. And I like optimism. I've always looked for that angle in life. I always look in the good in a situation for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Oh, well, I mean, of course, when people hear me, they're like, oh my God, you're the most positive person. You're so optimistic. And actually, I don't feel like I am. I feel like there's positive and negative, but then there's just truth. There's reality when our mind is quiet. So, I'm a meditator, and when I'm in a deep meditative state and my mind isn't thinking, there's a reality that exists whether my mind is being positive or negative. Because when there's no mind, when you're totally empty and clear and quiet inside, what is what's left. And what is peace. And then people are like, oh, you're so optimistic. It's like, no, just reality is love. Like
Yes.
love. Yeah, love, right. Love permeates the whole universe. That's not me being positive. That's not a belief I hold. There's a universal message that every religion, every saint, every sage, every great podcaster, all these people I talk to, I just keep hearing the same message. We come at it from different religions and spiritual practices and whatnot. But in the end, we all want peace, joy, love, bliss, the feeling of oneness, and the wisdom that goes with that experience. The way to get there is actually not to try to hold the mind in a positive state, because holding the mind is always a problem. Just by definition, you don't want to try to stop this thing that's always talking and moving, nor do you want to try to always make it positive, because positive is like a pendulum, always leads to negative. But when we kind of transcend the idea of positive and negative, when we go beyond those ideas, my experience is reality is just inherently good. So when I first heard I live in a benevolent universe, that idea, I was like, I don't just believe that. That's what I experienced when I was 19 years old. And the more I meditate, the more I tap into that, and to realize like the universe is on my side. We're one big self, and self doesn't harm self. Self loves self, and you and I are part of the same self. Yeah, to me, it does go beyond being just positive, which is like usually a mental effort. This is just like being intimately with what is and saying reality seems to be inherently good. the reason why it doesn't look like that is the human mind is very out of harmony. And we're not necessarily exposed, like you were saying, like you have to be careful with Google Doc, because there's so many opinions out there. Yet if you study the great saints and sages, the ones who are just glowing with light and love, you say, well, I want to feel like that. What are they teaching? There are real, consistent, deep messages for those who are asking the right questions, or at least doing the right searches.
One of the things I did too was get some holistic doctor too to get involved. And it turned out some of my health issues related to what I was eating, right?
Sure, sure.
And that's because we've been told you've got to eat this or that, like dairy. Dairy is
Yeah.
not, my body said no, thank you. But it's kind of hard to explain, but I had some of my some of the family members thought, what is she doing? But it helped me heal. And I just looked at different opinions. And also your environment, I think, affects your mental state and physical state.
Well, there's so many things, like in my background in Chinese medicine, we talk about what are the causes of illness. And
Yeah.
sure, there's environmental toxins, there's your living space, there's the foods that you're eating. But the main thing that I caught on to, and why I went into the field of hypnotherapy instead of Chinese medicine, was in Chinese medicine, we talk about how the emotions affect our health. Right. So anger affects the liver, fear affects the kidneys, overthinking and rumination affects the spleen, stomach, pancreas, digestive system. The heart is affected by anxiety. So like changing your diet, awesome. Changing your environment, awesome. But if we don't change what's inside, if we don't realize how toxic our own thoughts and emotions are, like I said, those negative emotions compromise our digestion. So what if somebody who is really scared, living with deep-seated anxiety and fear and past traumas, what if all of that was compromising their digestive system where, okay, now you are lactose intolerant or whatnot, but what if those beliefs and emotions, those negative thoughts, what if those were healed? Maybe your body could tolerate so much more. I'm not saying we should eat crummy foods, and I essentially eat a vegan diet and as pure and healthy as possible, but mostly because when you're clear in a meditative state, your inner guidance basically tells you what to eat, right? You're really in touch with yourself. So to me, it always goes back to prioritizing the spiritual, mental, emotional, and then the behaviors, the foods, the lifestyle, the environment follows, but it's prioritizing the inside first, and then the outside tends to be much healthier if you're coming from that space.
Right. I always wanted to eat vegetables, right? And that's because my body just knew, but then you're, like I was saying, the outside forces, like you got to have dairy. And and there's a book called the China Syndrome. I think that's what it's called. The Chinese, my understanding is the Chinese culture, now they're getting more cancer, but they didn't have, because of the our Western diet has a lot to do with it. And so it was, to be honest with you, Matthew, hard for me to get off of dairy because it's addicting. I mean, that's kind of, but then I had to learn, that's when I got more into like yoga and meditating and all that, because like you had to calm down, you got to stop. But it led to cancer is kind of what it was. And so my body, if that makes sense, was trying to fight off the stupid dairy that I was consuming. And so your immune system couldn't deal with, it's just so many different issues. But I'm still here, right? And it's because I did reach out and I did get the right kind of help rather than just taking some drug to suppress it's just weird things like that. And I really, the spiritual aspect of it, I think helped me. But like I said, the doctor had helped me. It was really hard. You don't realize it how addicting it is.
Sure. Yeah, no, I've heard holistic health practitioners be like, life is too short to not have cheese. And it's like, well, that sounds like a nice statement, but life is actually really precious. And if you're filling your body with this phlegm producing, heavy, diet definitely is a huge part of it. But I'm glad you're using the word holistic, because if we don't look at all the other aspects, then I've seen in my private practice, cancer just healed, like literally through in a complementary way, working with medical professionals, but still I've seen it completely heal. And if we only think it's like, oh, it's just the food I'm eating, then again, we're not realizing those toxic thoughts, those negative emotions, the lack of inner peace, can seriously affect your body. So yeah, I'm all for impeccable diet. And I agree, the studies are out there. These other cultures that used to be healthy, but now they start eating all the refined sugars.
Yes.
And, sure enough, yeah.
I took the traditional approach and the diet. They were just really, because when my cancer came back, it was considered aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was right around the time, like, what do I do? Right. So I had all these other tests done, and then they were really surprised and happy that how well I healed. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was, but I knew, because I had to be there for my sons, I
Yeah.
had to do something. That was my thing. And then getting, like you said, peace. I never really thought of using that word. It was peace. I would go and give everybody, show them that I was eating apples and drinking water, and not eating cookies and Coke a year ago.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
that's kind of what you want to be, the example too. And I started seeing a chiropractor too, because some
Mm-hmm.
people thought that was kind of, but that's kind of a holistic way to help your body heal, because everything is just so connected. And I learned all this from, I did Institute of Integrated Nutrition. I'm
Yeah, I've heard of them. Sure.
I did that because that
Mm.
kind of, after I saw the holistic doctor, I'm like, okay, how can I learn even more, right?
Yeah.
And that was helpful. And that's when I learned the importance of the meditation. And I learned about Deepak Chopra. Is that how you say his
Yeah.
name? Sorry.
Like Chopra. Sure. Yeah.
I get his email newsletter and all that. I learned so much about that. And another thing that just made me think about all this is you said the Chinese medicine, and what is chakra? What religion is that related to?
Yeah, it comes out largely out of the Indian tradition,
Okay,
Indian. So largely Hinduism, but you'll find it in Buddhism. But Buddhism came out of Hinduism essentially.
right.
So yeah, the word is chakra, and there's seven main chakras along the cerebral spinal axis. So basically, from your tailbone to your crown, where the first chakra, if you're measuring or numbering from the bottom up, the first chakra is at your tailbone, and then all the way up. My company, Anahat Education Group, the word Anahat is the Sanskrit word for the heart chakra.
Ah,
So
Anahat.
that's a
Okay.
major chakra. But to make chakras, in a short discussion here, understandable for people, when you say, oh, my heart broke, it's not your physical heart, it's your emotional heart. You could say your emotional heart is your chakra. And then you have your third eye, that's like a chakra. So essentially, chakras can be blocked or open. They don't totally close or you would die, but they can get quite blocked. So people say, oh, your chakras are closed. Well, no, they're just quite blocked. When you have an imbalance on the mental emotional level, it affects the chakras and then it affects the physical body. So basically, there's fear or love, essentially. Fear constricts, love opens. So when fear constricts the heart chakra, it does affect the physical heart as well. There are actually studies that have been done that show when you close your heart emotionally, your physical heart actually starts to calcify.
Oh,
Your
wow.
physical heart hardens when you emotionally choose to close down. So again, it goes back to, like, no matter what you're you saying, I keep going back to the mental emotional level, because the mind is affecting our physiology through the chakras in more ways than people realize. So yeah, chakras used to be more of a woo-woo kind of thing. They're
Right.
not hard, it's not hardcore science, right? They're not really proven. Yet the model is extremely valuable. I teach it in our hypnotherapy training, all about the chakras. And once you catch on that, oh, if I have a thoughts like I'm weak, I'm powerless, I'm helpless, I'm trapped, I'm out of control, all of those affect the third chakra, which deals with personal power, which is the solar plex region of the body. So when you're thinking, I'm weak, I'm powerless, I'm helpless, those negative thoughts cause negative emotions, right? So I'm weak and trapped and powerless and helpless. Well, now I feel scared, I feel angry, and then that affecting the third chakra solar plexus area goes right to the gastrointestinal system. So then we see like ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, endometriosis, the GI system, but that whole area gets affected by those type of thoughts. And understanding the chakras is an amazing way to understand the mind-body connection.
And that what you had mentioned about the gut thing, I have a family member who had serious IBD out of nowhere.
Mhm.
And it turned out there was a traumatic experience in
Yeah.
their life that they were suppressing.
Yeah.
And so now she's had to have some medication. They jumped in and helped her. I'm just saying so much to not have to have her colon removed. That's how bad it was, as serious
Yeah.
it was. But they ended up, which I like this doctor who's a researcher, suggested that she also have to see a psychologist and all that to help for the mental aspect to get to find
Yeah.
out. So she's doing so much better now. But
Mhm.
but we, people don't realize that. Like you said, the mental and the stress, she was suppressing it and hiding it. And we're so glad that she's doing so much better and is probably seeing a psychiatrist. I don't know if it's a psychologist or I think it's psychologist, not a counselor, but
Yeah.
she was open to that, right? But it's hard suppressing some trauma.
Oh yeah, I've been doing hypnotherapy now for over 25 years. I can't tell you how many people I've regressed using hypnotic regression back to the cause of their problems. And what sounds like or looks like a physical problem in psychosomatic illness, by definition, meaning, that word simply means the mind causes the problem, psychosomatic.
Right.
All psychosomatic illness is mental. And when you regress to the root cause of what's happening in the mind, you find these traumatic events, usually from childhood, that are
Yes.
unresolved, right? And yeah, so you'll go to a doctor, like you mentioned, chiropractic. If you go to a chiropractor, what are they going to do? They're going to crack your back, right?
Right.
They probably do other things, but for the most part, we know they're going to adjust your spine. But the question would be, why is the spine out of whack? A lot of the times they realize, oh, well, that's muscle tension pulling the spine out of alignment. So then
Yes.
they bring in massage therapists to loosen up the muscles. But then you ask the massage therapist, well, why are the muscles so tight? They say, oh, well, they're energy blocks. I'm a massage therapist, but I'm learning about the energy. So then you say,
Yeah.
well, if the energy is the blockage, if that's where the problem actually is, then it's not really chiropractic, it's not really massage. Now it's about like acupuncture or something. Let's deal with the energy body. But if you ask the energy practitioners, why is the energy out of balance? They go, oh, well, those are suppressed emotions. Okay, now you bring in your psychologists, but you say, okay, well, why are there suppressed emotions? Well, because people don't learn how to deal with their emotions. They hold all the stuff inside. Where are the memories that are causing these negative emotions coming from? Childhood. So once you see that the thing we call sickness is actually a thought manifesting physically, you learn to translate things into thoughts. The
Right.
thing called cancer or IBS or whatever, certainly if it's psychosomatic, it originated with a thought. In hypnotherapy, we can take the beliefs and emotions that we're dealing with that are associated with the issue, regress back to the cause. So we're talking about gastrointestinal stuff. I had a 70 something, 71-year-old client. She had Crohn's disease for the whole of her
Oh, wow.
adult life, as I remember. And in 10 hours of work, 5 sessions, completely healed. And it was based on dealing with the past traumatic events that were manifesting in her body. A lot of pain that people live with, where we just medicated and whatnot. Or, go to acupuncture and they'll stick needles in you. Go to a chiropractor, they'll adjust your back. But most of the pain that I've dealt with in my private practice has a mental emotional component. There are past memories where a person was hurt, and the mind, the subconscious mind, holds these memories in a loop, just replaying this trauma over and over again. Through the deep inner work that we can do in hypnotherapy, we can break that cycle. We can put a wrench in the spokes, but really, we can resolve the memories, the negative beliefs, the negative emotions.
Right.
That's what heals the energy body. That's what heals the physical body. So, yeah, I've been in the field for so long, and I just kept asking the question, what's the root cause of all of this suffering? It always comes back to the mind. So yeah, I could
Really.
talk to you like all day about healthy eating and healthy environment and energy work and chiropractic, but man, I can't emphasize again, if we don't deal with the mind, we are missing the root cause of virtually all pain and suffering.
I'm really grateful for my chiropractor because I started seeing one because I had an injury. I fell on some ice. One of my dogs pulled me. We were visiting my in-laws in
Yeah.
Wisconsin. So I'm lucky I didn't fall on my face, knock my teeth out.
Sure.
But a regular doctor, they just were giving me pain pills. I'm like, this is what
Yeah.
doing squat, right? Sorry.
Yeah.
And I had
Sure.
physical therapy. And that's kind of what it is. And then it was the chiropractors that introduced me to the holistic doc when all this other stuff
Uh,
came on. And I just like how they're all connected. These doctors will refer you
sure.
to others. And I like doctors who let me ask questions, but I trust them more
Yeah.
rather than this is it, right
Mhm.
solution. And I think that's what you're doing, Matthew. You're helping people get to that point. I've I haven't seen a hypnotherapist, but I learned so much from my holistic doctor.
Yeah.
Okay. And it did boil down to I had a environmental issue being around the military. I was exposed to radiation. That's
Mm.
kind of where some of that, and all these weird things, that's what they've determined based on these different doctors. And I have a brain tumor, and that's what caused the cancer. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's just
Sure.
weird,
Sure.
affected my hormones, and then at the same time, I was eating dairy like it was going out of style.
Hmm. Yeah.
But it's again, we learned about resilience when we're going through this. I would assume you focus on that too, the word resilience with your clients.
Yeah. I, the word comes up certainly. I guess what I focus on are the client's goals, right?
Right.
And then creating motivation to get to their goals. So
Right.
if it's just resilience to get through a problem, then essentially you're just moving away from pain.
Yeah.
So I'll do that. We do like in our model, the way I teach it, column A, column B. Column A is just how are you now? What are your symptoms? What are your behaviors? The negative ones. What are your emotions? What are your beliefs? Let's look at all the negative we can. Then essentially we just say, how would you like to be? And we get that whole list. And that's, of course, much more positive and optimistic. The resilience, really, the way I work, is creating motivation to get to column B. And a lot of that is by me being a role model to live the teachings, right? To say, I can tell you what inner peace is like. I can tell you what radiant health is like. I can, tell you what it's like to easily eat a healthy vegan diet. Like, here's what life could be like. So in our school, we teach something called the Life Mastery course, which is about essentially, simply stated, being able to visualize a self-actualized life where every aspect of your life is awesome. You're living this epic rockin' life. The resilience is not just to struggle through the pain, but it's to know where you want to go and then definitely be empowered with the tools to get there. So yeah, I'm all for sticking with it, to have hope, to have faith, to have optimism, because the great poet Rumi, he said, don't turn towards darkness. I tell you, suns exist. Right. So knowing that there is light, that there is love, there is peace, there is joy, there is healing, there's health, there's a wonderful future. Like you mentioned, your children, right? That's mental, right? You say, I want to
Yes.
live for my kids. That's
Yes.
a mental choice, right? So yeah, resilience is a mental function, right? And yeah, hypnotherapists can help to awaken all of those positive qualities to significantly increase the probability of healing from something like what you did.
And right, I think of resilience also connected to change because I think people resist change.
Mhm.
I mean, it just depends on their situation, but some people resist it and they don't like it, and but it's normal. And
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, the Buddha's enlightenment, they were like, what happened to you? He's like, well, I woke up. That's what like Buddha means, the awakened one. But then he asked him, like, well, what did you discover about the nature of reality? He said, basically, everything is empty in the sense that it's impermanent. It's empty of a separate self. Waves go up, waves go down. Where's the wave? There's no wave. There's just water moving. There's just the electrons doing what they do to, or, atoms, whatever, manifesting into form. So it's all impermanent anyway. If we don't accept that, then what we resist persists. Right.
yes,
So resisting a changing world, which includes our emotions, right? You try to resist your emotions, you resist your negative thinking. The resistance is what closes chakras. Resistance is what causes blockages, right? Resisting change is suffering because life is change. It's constantly changing. So, but from my experience, knowing that underneath or within all that change is that inherent goodness makes it a lot easier to allow, to surrender, to let go, to accept. Those are the kind of words I believe people benefit from hearing more and more. Surrender and let go. Stop controlling and resisting, right? Allow and surrender. And then you just start finding life knows what it's doing when you get out of the way. So, yeah, being afraid of change, literally is insane because life is constantly changing. But there's like in the religion Taoism, the Tao is the harmony and way, the flow of the universe. And it's like a surfer. You could resist that waves are doing what they do, or you can learn to ride the waves, right? You could resist dancing with your partner, or you can learn to dance with your partner. When you learn to dance with life, to harmonize with life, you would never resist change. You're just joyfully along for the ride. So yeah, all these solutions are there. And I'm glad we're talking about it because, yes, some people I'm sure who are struggling with sickness, who only know traditional American thinking,
Yes,
there's so much more out there, right, than the traditional McDonald's diet and the way that a lot of us think. So yeah, there are absolutely answers for those who are looking for them.
that's awesome. And kind of what all you're saying is kind of in line with those podcasts, Real Things Living. That's really what it is. It's
Mhm.
I say be you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's okay if you're different. And I
Mhm.
love what you're doing to help people out. I'm glad that it's kind of a movement in a way, right? It's kind of growing here in North America or United States, whatever. It's
Mhm.
kind of doing better. And I think we're gonna continue seeing lots of change, but we
Mhm.
just got to deal with it. And I still to help you stay grounded though, I think is to know your values. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. In our life mastery course and the general work I do, we prioritize early on in the work, focus on your life principles, focus on your values, living from love, integrity, honesty, resilience. Make a list of those qualities. And then we use hypnosis to actually program that in so
Oh
that
wow.
you have your subconscious mind aligned with your highest values. That's a wonderful formula for success in anything you do is get your deep inner mind aligned with your highest values. Couldn't agree more with you there.
Yeah, that's perfect. And this is a really good way to kind of end this a little bit. Can you tell me, or not me, the listeners where they can learn more about you?
Yeah, there's two websites for the hypnotherapy side of things and hypnotherapy training. Institute of Hypnotherapy.com. So super easy, Institute of Hypnotherapy.com. And for those who want to go even deeper into the meditative teachings that I offer, onlinemonastery.com. So again, onlinemonastery.com. It's 100 hours of free meditation training that can go really, really deep, but also some good basic teachings to get started. And then for anybody, you mentioned my peace book. It's available on YouTube for free. So you can just go to YouTube, type in Matthew Brownstein, Peace Under All Circumstances.
Oh, wow.
And the book, Peace Under All Circumstances, is free as an audiobook on YouTube.
Oh, that's cool. I so appreciate your time, and I think this is going to be beneficial to all the listeners. And I will include those links that he just mentioned in the description. And thank you so much, Matthew, for your time. This is really, really awesome.
Nice. Thank you, Bridget. Glad you had me on.
Have a great day, everybody.